I'm Mackenzie, fertility and prenatal dietitian, and this video is in response to a comment that I received on a previous video, the one about insulin resistance, what that actually is and how it affects fertility. And this viewer had a pretty specific question. They wanted to know more about why exactly it was that high insulin levels inhibit ovulation. And so if you go back and watch that video in detail, you'll hear me talk about how insulin resistance is almost like having rusty locks on the doors to your cells. And so when glucose enters your body, it can't get into your cells appropriately. Insulin is a key that's supposed to open that door, but has a tough time doing it if that lock is rusty. And so your body can compensate by sending out more insulin. And unfortunately, insulin can turn on and turn off other things in your body, including sex hormones. So kind of the simplest answers to this question is that high insulin can lead to changes in sex hormones, and that inhibits ovulation. But I have a feeling that this viewer was actually looking for a little bit more of an in-depth answer. And as a nerd myself, I am always happy to get into the nitty-gritty sciencey details. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over a diagram that kind of explains exactly which hormones are being thrown out of whack with insulin and what this is actually doing in your body when you have high insulin levels due to PCOS. Okay, so here we have that diagram, pathophysiology of PCOS. This diagram was probably like one of the most in-depth ones I found on the internet, and is attached to a scientific paper. And you can find that by Googling this title and these authors' names: Alex Rotstein, Ragini Srinivasan, and Eric Wong. I will say that I am a fat positive dietitian. And so when I see obesity as something that causes these things, I'm always going to be skeptical and question that. In my clinical opinion, my professional insight into what the research is saying about PCOS is I see that being in a higher weight body might not be something that's wrong at all. And if it is anything that is not normal or natural for that person, it might be part of kind of the symptoms that we're seeing in relation to high insulin, and kind of essentially a symptom of PCOS, but not something that causes PCOS. PCOS is never your fault. So I kind of wish that they didn't have that here as a risk factor for PCOS, but it is what it is. This is the world we live in, and moving on. So you can see that there's a lot of hormonal things going on with PCOS. So anovulation is not just due to insulin resistance. It often has to do with some of these other kind of hormonal precursors due to kind of that increase in LH that we see a lot with people with PCOS. And it actually has to do with kind of differences in gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is what GnRH is as well. But let's focus on insulin resistance, since that's something that's a little bit more kind of in our power to do something about. And that's what this viewer asked about as well. So hyperinsulinemia, that's what high insulin is. That's kind of the medical official term for it. But you can see here that hyperinsulinemia leads to an increase in androgenic enzymes, which are the precursors to androgens. So androgens are male sex hormones, including testosterone, and some other ones, including DHEA sulfate as well. And we also see a decrease in sex hormone binding globulin, being something that leads to that androgen excess as well. And that increase in testosterone and DHEA sulfate is what can lead to hirsutism, acne, and alopecia, which are some really common kind of visual symptoms that we see in people with PCOS. Hirsutism is facial hair, acne is acne, and alopecia is loss of hair on the top of the head. So essentially, we're seeing that the hyperinsulinemia is causing high androgens, and then that is in turn what is leading to difficulty in ovulation. What happens is it arrests the follicle from developing. So essentially what happens in your ovary when you're about to ovulate, or as your body's getting ready to ovulate, is we see kind of these little kind of teeny tiny cysts, also known as follicles, start to develop, and inside that follicle will develop the oocyte, or the egg. However, in PCOS, we see a bunch of those follicles start to develop, but they don't finish developing. So that's why oftentimes we see this polycystic presentation of ovaries. There's kind of like a string of pearls presentation on a transvaginal ultrasound that we might see in those ovaries. So essentially, the egg isn't fully developing, and therefore somebody with PCOS might not ovulate. And then from there, there's no kind of eggshell left behind. That's what the corpus luteum is. And that usually produces a lot of progesterone, and we're not seeing kind of adequate progesterone. So I hope that helps answer your question. And if you have follow-up questions about ovulation, about fertility, about pregnancy with PCOS, please leave me a comment below. I would love to hear that. And I see clients one-on-one for PCOS, and I'm actually coming out with a mini course on insulin resistance for fertility and pregnancy very soon. And if you head to my website and join my email list, not only will you get a free snack guide for fertility and pregnancy, but you'll also be the first to hear about this mini course, which is coming out very soon. And there will be deals for those that are on my email list. Thanks for watching.